Who is Mr. Levi Kones?
I'm a God-fearing person. I'm a family person. I'm married to Wangeshi.
Mm-hmm.
We have 3 daughters, 21, 14, almost, and 8 years old.
Amazing.
And I'm a journalist by profession.
Mm-hmm.
I work for a media house. I do TV production, as well as I host a show actually on Cast TV. And other than that, I have recently under the title of author.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we want to get into that because of course the issues of time with you having earned the recent title of an author. There is no useless experience. How did it get here? To writing a book, actually, to putting it into writing.
Yeah, well, the book really started after I got unwell.
Okay.
At some point in 2018, I was diagnosed with cancer of the colon, and I had to go through 12 chemos and 2 surgeries. And then during that time when I was unwell, and it looked like, in my initial diagnosis, the diagnosis was not good. In fact, the doctor who saw me was talking about, 4 out of 10 people survive this cancer in terms of the advancement, because I was in stage 3B, just about close to 4. The walls of my colon were almost rupturing. So he didn't give me a very good prognosis in terms of this is, of course, this was the initial guy who gave me the news, in terms of what it would mean going forward with the sickness. So when I began the journey and I began doing chemos, I then started reflecting. You spend a lot of time in hospital thinking about yourself, your life, your things, and there are moments when you're truly alone and there's no one else with you. Your wife can be there, people can be there, but when they leave at night, you're thinking to yourself, and I thought, if I died and I never, wrote some of the experiences that happened in my life, what would it be for? And people started encouraging me, and of course they told me, write about cancer, write about, especially after I got well and then I got healed, and God removed me from this particular ailment, and people told me, write a book, and in their minds, I think mostly they thought the book would be about cancer and fighting disease. Now, there's one chapter about that, but then I began thinking, but there's so many other things God has delivered me from. Sickness puts us somewhere where we think it's the only thing. When you're sick, you rely on God, you pray a lot, all of us, pray harder, you attend more, prayer meetings, you go for anointing and all those kind of things because you're sick. But if you were to sit down and reflect, God is protecting you from a lot of things every day.
True.
And so, because of that, I began thinking of the book. And a friend of mine came to my hospital bed, but she didn't really realize, because she was talking to me about this whole thing of writing a book. And then she told me, this life of yours, truly these experiences you've had, there is no useless experience.
Wow.
And I took a pen and I wrote that down.
Let me try to build you back, drive you back. When was this happening? Was this happening in Kenya, or this was happening back in the U.S.?
No, this was happening now. By the time I was getting unwell, this is now in Kenya. I was diagnosed in 2018, early. It's just recently. And of course, all these stories had already happened before.
Yes.
If you go to my Facebook page, at some point I had alluded to some of these stories. I'd written a few posts, and then people would say, I like what you have written. I think that relates to me. And those are the things, that now became, a groundwork for a compilation of this particular book. But, it took the moment of my being sick to really bring that to fruition. I don't think if I had not fallen unwell, whether we'd be reading that book today, honestly speaking.
How long did it take you from now the conception of that thought?
Oh, it took a long time. Oh, no. When you think of writing a book, it sounds like, you can start one today and finish tomorrow.
Yeah.
It took me 3 years.
Oh.
And initially when I started, I was writing by hand. So I was writing on foolscaps. Just the concepts I wanted, things like that. And for me to translate that into a typed out document took a while. Then I began typing. Then when I began typing, I began wondering whether I should say what I should say. You get doubt. Because, if you notice, the book is quite, how do I put it? nimejianika
sana. So candid. I mean, the way in which you have written about yourself here, I don't think I'll do that.
Yeah, people say so. You know that you think it's not something I battled with. I battled with that. So I was like, really, do I write that?
Let me. I was trying to internalize something. We were talking with him, and it was like two things. You talked about your cancer and your experience back where you were, and he told me, like, you know, he bought a flight and sleepers. He stepped in JKA. These two things inspired this book. Your life back in the US and your sickness.
Yes.
Which one really took you off balance?
Both in different ways. I'll tell you that. Of course, the US story took me off balance because I was young. I was, life was seemingly just starting out for me. I was in my 20s. And that particular incident in my life was very heavy, very traumatizing, because for a long time, even after I got back, I used to think I was still in the US. I'd dream and wake up and look around and the ceiling, and I'm back in my parents' house. So it had a big trauma to it. Now, getting sick was a different kind of trauma, you know, a grappling with your mortality. And it's different. We all know that one day we will die. But you know, if you're told today that it's going to be next week, it's a totally different story. Or next month, or you have a year to live. The situation in your mind will be a completely different mindset, especially when you're faced with something that you're being told is terminal. You know, you really are not sure. You're going to go into a journey of medicine, and you're not sure whether you'll survive. And the worst thing about, for example, sickness is, you know, you get into WhatsApp groups. People put you in groups, support groups and things and stuff. And then in those groups, people you have interacted with begin to die. And you're always thinking, what if I'm next? Could be me, you know? And so that gives you a different kind of trauma. I would say in terms of the mental stress that those two things give you, they are equal but different. In the sense that one is a life-changing event that involves you fending for yourself, looking for things, and failing in such a big way in terms of what you wanted to achieve in your life. The other one is a grapple with your life in terms of, have I done everything I could have? What if my life ended tomorrow? What if it ended today? What if this thing has come to take me away? So they're different, but they're both equally debilitating.
The 30th of November, 1999.
Oh, yeah.
I want us to get there. When you first landed in the US and your American dream. I know there are stories leading to that just before the 1999.
Yeah.
And you getting into one college after another. And then I would decide, it's sport medicine for me.
Yeah.
Tell us about the American journey.
The American journey was, I don't always wanted to go to America. I think people, you know, I see people nowadays, the American embassy is the one that receives the highest number of visa applications to date, you know, and I should say they're a bit of also, I don't want to call them con men, but see, for the amount of visas they reject and the money they get.
And the money they get. I actually saw that story a while ago. And the numbers are huge, and how much people pay.
Yeah, and how much people pay. So people are really dying to go to America. And I wanted to go so badly. My sister had gone a year before, 2 years before, and she kept on telling me, come over, apply. So when she sent me the papers for the application, and I got what is called an I-20 form, which is now an acceptance by a university for you now to go. It was something, I don't think my parents expected that I would get the visa. But I got the visa, and then Arambe was done, and then I'm taking off that day. Of course, in my book, you see the circumstances around my takeoff were very scandalous.
Yes.
Because
to the very last minute.
Yes. Because I went with a friend of mine, and we got drunk, and I was drunk at the airport leaving. But when I got to France, because my stop, then Air France used to fly to Kenya, because it was an Air France flight. And I went through Paris. And I remember my first stop there, it was a really huge airport. So big, it's got buses running all over the place. And, they speak a lot of French. I think now they're trying with English, but really those days, they were only speaking to you in French. So I got lost for a while. And by the time I was getting to the US, I was landing at the first airport in Atlanta. It's called Hartford. if Paris was a big airport, then Atlanta was
massive.
Huge.
Crazy big. It was big, and then the accents, and then the people, and then America has got a peculiar smell. It smells like, I don't know.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a difference. If you've gone to like India has like a smell.
Well,
Kenya has there's like a scent of I don't know how to put it. You land in a country and you feel something. Even Kenya has its own unique,
Now I understand why someone never landed in Kenya. Someone was coming to Kenya a while back, and they did
and they didn't
land because they said they don't like how Kenya smells, and the flight had to be
I don't think they say it in a when we say smell, it might sound offensive. There's how there's a way like
a feel. There's a feel. Yes.
There's like a perfume I use if I walk in the room, that's
Levi.
Or somebody else would say that's
exactly.
There's those things. They're unique to certain countries.
Yes.
And I don't know how to describe America's smell, but it's sort of like manufactured in, like how you'd open a new product and that can in.
Oh.
So there I was. That's the first thing I noticed. The second thing, of course, was the amount of because Atlanta has a lot of Black Americans, and the Black Americans there really gave me a hard time at the airport.
Cool.
Incidentally, they were pocking my bag and running, and like a good Kenyan, I had carried sausages, roiko, those. I'm taking them to my sister. Tea leaves, those things, and they were all bomolewed at the airport in the search. So there was that culture shock thing.
Yes.
But once I got now I got to the airport, and then I was connecting to Kansas, which they put me in a much smaller flight.
Was your sister waiting at the airport then?
No, that was now. This is the entry point.
This is Atlanta. Okay.
So she was waiting in Kansas City.
Oh, okay.
And the connection flight,
Kansas?
Yeah, from Atlanta to Kansas, about another 3 or so hours.
Okay.
So by the time I was now arriving where she was, I had kind of gotten used to Nikongambo. Kind of thing. Yeah? I think even my English had changed a bit.
In a day, actually not a day, just a few hours.
I was saying, yo man, how you doing, man? I'm Levi. But there's excitement.
Yes.
You're landing in a new country.
To school now.
Yeah. And so I was picked up from the airport. We went to her house. I really liked the fact that she had a place. For me, I never stayed away from my parents. But now I was living with my sister who had a house.
Interesting.
Yeah.
She was a student still.
She was a student still, but she was also working part-time, so she had gotten herself a vehicle. She was doing quite well.
Okay.
So those first days, I was greatly homesick because I kept calling back home and, running up bills, talking to my friends back in Kenya because I had nothing more to do. I was watching soaps the whole day. School had not started. So you're watching those soaps that were in those days. Soaps here zilikuwanga nyuma, zile za American ndo zilikuwa mbele. So you're seeing, this happened to so and so, those things. And after a while, you get used to start going to school and you start meeting new people, and the Kenyanness begins to fade.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got into school to do sports medicine.
Yes.
How long did it take you in school?
I was in school for a year before I dropped out.
Just 2 semesters.
2 semesters, I was out.
And in Kenya, you had barely done 2 semesters in the universities you went to.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't really to campus. I went to MTC.
MTC.
To do clinical medicine.
Okay.
Nairobi. I did clinical medicine for a year. Almost a year and a half before I dropped out. Then I went and did shipping management, and then I dropped out. Then I went
but at KMTC?
No. Shipping management, I did somewhere else.
Okay.
Then I went and did business management, and then I dropped out. And those ones like after a semester. So by the time I was going to the States, my parents were fed up with my stories. I don't think I really knew what I wanted to do. In fact, as far as the clinical medicine concerned, I remember my dad just brought me the acceptance letter. It was a good, idea that, my son can become a daktari eventually. So I don't really feel like it was somebody asked me. Is that maybe if they had asked me, perhaps what I'm doing now should have been what I was doing all along. But those roads, and even doing sports medicine was a choice by my sister simply because it was an easy get for the visa. It had nothing to do with my desire to do it.
And now, you start getting used into the American lifestyle.
Yes.
You make friends. And one thing that is very clear in your book is that you had so many friends. Like you moved from city to city.
Yes.
State to state. And in almost every state you had friends. Because you call a friend and pop, you're in one city.
Yeah.
Pop, you're housing with another one. Now, get us through the point at which now life, the party life and that lifestyle itself started getting into you to the point where now you are deciding, I don't think I need school anymore.
Yeah, it was the money.
Oh, the money.
Initially, I was working when I got there. The first jobs you get are warehouse jobs.
Yes.
You're driving a forklift. Maybe you're pangaing some boxes in a company. Maybe you're working in a gas station and you're a cashier.
Yeah.
Those are the kawaida jobs. Or you're doing telemarketing, which involves selling things on the phone to people, which is a really terrible job because people hang up on you a lot. But when I landed a job with Coca-Cola, it was purely by accident. They made an advertisement in the paper, and I'm a guy who reads Gazette up to today.
Okay.
I keep telling people, people who watch the news, watch things happen. People who listen on the radio, they just hear about things. But the guys who are shaking and moving the country, wako Gazette. Yeah. So even abroad, me, I used to read the paper religiously, the local paper. Even now, if I visit a new town or a new country, I'll always look at their paper and see what is going on with their story. So this job was advertised in the paper, and I saw it, and I applied for it. And in those days, when you make an application, they would ask you, "Are you an American?" You say yes, but they don't really follow up to check, "Are you truly an American?" You just tick a box. So I ticked the box. Then I went for the interview. And then, lo and behold, they were hiring 14 people. They hired me. And they hired me to be a territory sales manager for Coca-Cola Mid-America company. It was, the salary was really, in the terms of the scale of the things I'd been doing before that, was crazy. It was about $26 an hour, and I'd been earning $7. And that even today is still good money.
Yes, $6 in an hour.
In the US. So when my first paycheck came, I was done. I looked at it, I was...
How many hours did you work in a day then?
I was working 40 hours, and then if you do overtime, you get time and a half, which is now they give you the 26 plus 13.
Wow.
If you work overtime, and if you work holidays, which I was doing, you get double time. So if you work Christmas or Easter, or you're working on there are particular holidays. They've got Memorial Day.
Yes.
Their Independence Day. Yeah.
So then that paycheck, it must have been huge.
That paycheck sent me out of school. I asked myself, what's the point? We are going to school to
get the money.
To get money.
Yes. Don't you he?
I tell you, that's the purity of youth. So
just to ask, how old are you now at that point?
At that point when I'm doing that, I'm now 22.
Wow, 22, making this huge amount of money.
I'm now 22.
And school now.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's 22 years ago, actually, because I'm 44 now.
Oh.
It didn't occur to me.
So
yes.
this
half a life away.
This roller coaster went so fast. You went to school, you dropped out of school, it was a party time, you got a lot of backs. So when did you make decisions, or how did it come to a break that I'm done with the school, or was it the authorities who did say your time is up, or what kind of decision came to a point, to a halt, and was done for you?
The American time?
Yes.
You see, after this whole thing, that was what I would say.
Listen, before you come to that American halt,
yes,
what was your sister's opinion over everything else that you're doing?
She
one time sat
really
you
wanted
down
me.
And told you, Levi, this is not the way to go? Or how was this before it came to a halt?
Yeah, in my book I say we had moments of intense fellowship. I tried to be nice about it. But really we had major arguments. And some of those arguments involved, how she was a stickler for the rules.
Yes.
Even the way we had grown up, she was that person who was not disciplined in school. Me, I was always getting into trouble. She was always like on the dean's list and those kind of things. She really struggled to stay in school, even though she also had a fairly decent job. But me, I just
You're done. the impulsive you.
Yes. The impulse in me, yes, just quit. And when I quit, and then now I took over my work now was now full time. So there was even no space for me even to go to school, even if I wanted to, because this job was taking all my time. And the time it was not taking, I was busy traveling. You know,
state to state.
You know, trying to figure out America. You know, you hear your friend from high school, sijui, he's in California. Umeenda huko. You hear sijui so and so is in LA. You're there. You know, you're also excited about the fact that you can afford to do it. You're also showing off because you want to show them that you're also doing very well.
Very well. You have a car. You have a company van.
Yes, you know. So there's all that maringo involved, and you're moving around trying to do these things. And in the meantime, there are those things that are creeping up on you, like alcohol. And I don't know. There's something about the 20s, and for 20-year-olds, I've seen them even in my office. They go and drink the whole night, and they'll be in the work.
They'll be working in the morning.
They'll be working in the morning. They'll be working tomorrow. I don't think you can't do that. For me, I no longer do it, but you can't do that for me at my age. Even if I stay up at night at 1 o'clock talking to people, the next day I'm feeling that story. There's just something, but there's something about youth that there's an endless amount of energy. So in that energy, there's so many things you are doing, and if you're doing the wrong things, you can get to do a lot of things that are not right. So to answer your question properly, the point of departure between me and the school was simply because of how much money I was making. And yes, there were road signs, not just from my sister, also from the school, because the school did search for me. You know, and they were asking, hey, you're doing this course, where have you gone? You know, that kind of thing. But those things, I just sped through them. Not listening, not thinking, not doing anything.
Your visa getting to the US was a student's visa?
Yes.
Did you know the
F1 visa?
Yes. Did you know the consequences of the decision you just made?
You know how many, let me ask you something. How many times have you read the fine print of something? Do we do that? Do young people do that? Do they read you know, this particular product you're buying here, if you use it in such an X manner, it's going to send you to jail? None of us read those things.
None.
All we are doing is looking at the visa. That's why we end up with bad purchases, because sometimes we are buying something, but we haven't read the fine print. It doesn't work. You're running to a shop, and then the shop tells you, goods once sold cannot be
returned.
Yeah, nando ya ilikuwa imeandikwa, but you never read it because the print is even smaller. I think the same thing applies to the whole thing of the visa, which is why even one of the reasons why I wrote the book, not because I want to glorify my bad ideas, but because maybe if I tell you my story and how it went, then somebody young can read the fine print from what I'm saying in terms of you're going abroad or you want to go abroad, and these are the things that could happen to you. Because right now, potentially, at the moment in time, even as we are speaking, we are returning a total of almost 100 Kenyans per day from the US. Deported. For various things. Yes.
Wow.
Just go to GKI and stand there.
100 Kenyans. Such a huge number.
A day. Coming back for various things. And that's just the US. Other countries as well. And some of these violations are not at the big violations. You know, people tend to think, oh, you got deported. You must have been doing drugs. You must have been doing, as if doing drugs, you just told, hey, bad boy, go home.
Go home.
No, a country will jail you properly. Even here, we will jail you first in Kenya here before we send you anywhere. So the number one reason for guys getting deported is violation of the visa. And how do you violate your visa? You went to school, you didn't stay in school. You went to school and you were supposed to work X amount of hours. No, you decided you're going to work longer hours. You went to school and you forged a particular document so that you can get permission to go and work. Those are the things that get people in trouble. Yet there are seemingly things we would call them hustling. In other words, so that in me trying to do that and not listening to the warnings that were coming my way, I got into trouble big time.
You are earning big money, and here you are, your visa is a student visa, you're no longer a student, you're working full time. You have a sister, of course, road signs and every other thing. Didn't these things try to tell you, even for a minute, you gotta go back to school, or at least get yourself in line? Didn't you have such moments where you are by yourself and now you can go back?
I wish I could tell you and sound wise and say, yes, I was going to go back to school. But no, it was never featuring on my mind.
Wow.
Let me tell you, look at today even. You think it's a strange thing to me. Young people and money are always playing sports pesa, sijui betting company, sijui what, sijui. Tell me, of one young man that you know who would win 10 million shillings, for example, and then say, you know what, I'm going to school. The chance of that happening is 0.0001%.
Right.
Most of us think umeomoka.
Mm-hmm.
You know. That is why you see even some, look, the interesting thing, we are looking at newspapers with politicians who are fighting cases about degree choices.
Yes.
You know why they're doing that? Because when they had an opportunity to go to school with all the money they were making, it still didn't occur to them. Then let me go and finish. There's a silly thing that comes with this idea of getting money that blinds you to the possibilities and the realities of what life would be. You know how we say, and of course, in my book I talk about money, but here's the aspect of money that can be very, destructive. Money is a tool, but if you make it a god, it will blind you from seeing anything else other than the money. So you will not be able to make coherent choices because you have money. I mean, when you have money, there's that arrogance that can come with it. I mean, why should I? Sinikona do.
Of the many things you did in your time in the States, before you are now arrested and you jailed, you serve your time before you're deported.
Yes.
Which was your major? The one you look back to and say, wow, I was so out.
I got into an accident. We were coming from Chicago to Minneapolis, a friend of mine. Me, a certain lady friend, and another gentleman. And we had a vehicle. I remember it was a Toyota Maxima, and I even remember it was a 2002 model, a very fine car. And sorry, a Nissan Maxima. And and this car, we were going for that bash in Minneapolis, and basically one of the things we were going to, people would rent cars and then show those cars as if they're their own. So this car, and it looked like kutishia huko.
Floss.
And when we drove through a town called Milwaukee, and in Milwaukee, this lady decided to drive. Now, we bought some booze, we put it in the car. I am drinking, I'm on the right hand side because they drive on the left, and she's driving. And on the highway, as she was overtaking a trailer, it came out also to overtake someone else and hit us on the side. And we rolled a good one. And the speed was so high. And it was happening in the flash of an instant. Rolled so much, the car went over the road, went over the other side, landed on the roof. So we're on the roof, and this guy in the back has been thrown out because he didn't have a safety belt. The lady and I were belted, so both of us are inside the car, but we're upside down. And she suffered a neck injury. Thankfully, she got healed. And I walked out of the vehicle unscathed.
Interesting.
Zero injury, nothing. And you know what I did? When I got out, I got into a vehicle of a friend of mine who had come to pick us up. And we went right to the party and continued like nothing had happened.
Oh my God, you kidding?
No way.
Yeah, like nothing had happened. I remember when my mother called me the following day. I said, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" In fact, I said, "Kweli, wa mama kweli wanaomba." She said, "I was really praying for you yesterday."
Wow.
But they did stop me.
It didn't.
No, maybe for a few days, because I had whiplash, ile seat belts. So nasikia ka uchungu kwa chest kidogo, but as the uchungu went, so did the lesson.
This is Praise Radio.
Get ready for the revolution.